If the daily SRF polling is to be believed in South Africa, the ANC finds itself on the eve of national and provincial elections in serious trouble, with polls showing it to a significant decline back into the range that I predicted in November of 2021, when I said that the ANC would get no more than 38 to 42% of the popular vote in a free and fair election in 2024.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that St. Simon's Town and Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa.
Well, the ANC, after a few weeks of ticking upwards, after sending out their fossils, people like Thabo Mbeki and Baleka and Tokyo Sexwally to drum up support and beg for voters to vote for their party, to just give us more time, just more time. The ANC's pulled every stop out, thinking they could stop their party from its decline. And it may have been working briefly in May. We saw two things come together. First, the efforts by the ANC to dig up the fossils, bring them out, make lots of empty promises, hand out food parcels like at Mbizos in Northern Cape, seemed to be having an impact, and their numbers began to tick up, if these daily polls can be believed. But then a funny little thing happened that actually helped them more. The implosion of Jacob Zuma's MK party, Umkhonto we Sizwe, which found itself embroiled in all kinds of controversy, allegations of illegal signature fraud to get on the ballot. Then we have issues of Jacob Zuma even appearing on the ballot, and he has been correctly disqualified by the Constitutional Court, so he can't serve. Nonetheless, MK is still there, and its numbers have been swinging wildly, watching its support crater from over 13% down to 7%, and now back up to a higher figure. So the implosion of MK, the deployment of senior ANC cadres, including former President Thabo Mbeki, to go out and beg for votes, had an impact. Well, apparently, the African National Congress thought that wasn't enough. We need to do one more thing to push us over at the finish line to get us back up to 50 plus 1% for Parliament, which would be a victory, major victory for the ANC to retain that. Well, Cyril Ramaphosa, after lying to the public and saying he would only sign the national health insurance, which is essentially a government takeover of the healthcare sector. It's nationalization of healthcare. It's the destruction of South Africa's economy. Discovery Medical Insurance Group, which is the largest provider of private insurance, 60% of the market, their estimate says that South Africa spends 250 billion rand per year on healthcare, and that this bill would cost an additional 200 billion. There's no way the country can handle that. So this bill, which would nationalize healthcare, Ramaphosa cynically and the ANC must have thought that they'd be satisfying the labor union COSATU and the South African Communist Party by putting something in place that would ostensibly help, especially the labor unions, which are declining in support as well. Well, this has backfired massively with an own goal. The ANC, it appears now, sees its support crumbling. Now, how do we get to this stage? And is that really what's happening? Well, first, I can't give the veracity of these polls, the SRF polls that are coming out every day. News 24 says they're reliable and scientific, and I'll have to go with that. But what I can say is that there are some pretty clear indicators that the ANC did, in fact, commit an own goal here. First off, this party, which has become obsessed with race and dividing South Africans based on race, constantly attacks white South Africans and treats black South Africans as if they have no agency, as if they're incapable of succeeding or making it on their own. When in fact, South Africa's black middle class is now larger than the white middle class. Yeah. And so the ANC simply disregards them. Now, this daily tracking poll, they come out with the high turnout, low turnout, mid-level turnout. So I've selected here the mid turnout, about 60% of voters showing up. And you can see the ANC, which was below 40% in this poll on the 15th of April. As they got through April and into May, they climbed back over 40%. And then around May 13th, probably as a consequence of MK party imploding, as you can see, their numbers were dropping in the bottom here in the gold color for MK. They dropped significantly from about the 7th of May when they got into trouble down to about the 13th or 14th. They were in trouble, and the ANC went the other direction. Their fortune soared, rising up nearly to 47%. But then a funny little thing happened on the way to the forum, and that is that the ANC's president and the president of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, signed the National Health Insurance Bill into law on the 15th of May. So let's look at these figures. On the 15th of May, and then 2 days later after the announcement, and then a week later. On the 15th of May, the daily tracking poll had the ANC up to 45.9%, a significant increase from the 38% they had a month prior on April 15th. Great news for the ANC. That's a huge swing. The DA also doing better than expected at that point at 24.7. And the MK party had dropped down to 7.7% after rising to as high as 13 to 16%. 2 days after the signing of the bill, the ANC actually a little bit higher, Democratic Alliance a little bit lower, and MK slight gain. But a week later, after people have begun to digest the impact of this bill, which will destroy healthcare, especially for the middle class and the black middle class, the group that the ANC completely is ignoring, we see the ANC, according to the daily tracking poll, cratering to 40.8%, losing about 6% of its support nationwide. The DA up to 27%, which would be a record performance for them, and MK at 13.3%, which will also be a record performance because they did not exist before any of this took place, before this election. So what is going on here? Has the ANC scored an own goal, or are we just willingly being led by the Pied Piper in the legacy media and these polling outfits? Are we just hearing what we want to hear? Well, what is in play here? Could it be that South Africa's black middle class is in revolt? A cohort of black South Africans whose numbers now exceed 3.5 million, people who have vested interest in a market economy, who are approaching retirement age, who prefer private medical insurance to broken, dilapidated state-run health outcomes. Is that what's going on here? Well, interestingly enough, and presciently, in December 2014, not exactly rocket science, but still nonetheless a very useful report, was written by Robert Mattis, and it was entitled South Africa's Emerging Black Middle Class, a Harbinger of Political Change. It was Afrobarometer's Working Paper 151. And he said the following in the abstract. While members of the middle class are no more likely to hold democratic values than other black South Africans, they are more likely to want government to secure higher order rather than basic survival needs. In other words, SASSA grants are not what appeals to them. But attacking their medical aid, that is an issue. He went on to say they are less likely to identify with the governing ANC, to turn out to vote, or to voice their concerns by contacting officials or joining collective action. This group are the black middle class, and this may explain the ANC cratering here. I mean, if only 18 million people show up to vote, and there's 3.5 million black South Africans in the middle class, so let's just presume that half of them vote, that is a huge swing and could account almost entirely for the loss in support for the ANC. In fact, that's happening. Now it becomes absolutely critical for the ANC to drum up support among go-go's, grandmothers, and the elderly in their strongholds in rural South Africa, in Northwest, in Eastern Cape especially, in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, because clearly those who are part of the economy are not happy with the ANC's decision to rob the country of its health care. Now, Martin Neethling, who is the chief marketing officer at PepsiCo Sub-Saharan Africa last year, said, perhaps we lose sight of the fact that the middle classes are really the bulwark for full economic development and success. It's fundamental to growth. Absolutely. And he was correct in stating that last year in 2023. The middle class is absolutely essential for an economy, and these can be the swing voters that can turn elections. So where are we at? I don't know. You tell me. But one thing's for certain. It looks like the ANC is in serious trouble as people go to the polls on the 29th of May. Well, it could be historic, and I will be on the ground in South Africa to observe the elections on May 29th. Here's hoping for peaceful, safe, nonviolent voting taking place on the 29th and when the results of this election are announced. Well, Viva ANC? Maybe not so much. Maybe not so much. Thanks a lot, folks. Be sure to hit the like button and feel free to leave a comment behind. We appreciate your patronage of the channel. If you're not a subscriber, please become one. And if you want to support independent journalism, these trips to South Africa cost a lot of money. You are welcome to become a paying member of the channel or give us a super chat sometime when we are live. Thank you so much. God bless.